So, as many of you who watch this channel either know or could pretty easily figure out, I used to play chess. I was a pretty competitive chess player, not a master or grandmaster or anything like that. But I played in a lot of tournaments, played at some local clubs, and it was a big part of my life before curling, and still something I do from time to time. In chess, openings, by which we mean sequences of moves at the start of a game, are really well established and have been deeply analyzed for well over a century now. Competitive players usually know at least a little something about most openings and really dig deep into the ones they plan on playing or playing against, most often in their tournament games. After all, you have to know your Najdorf Sicilian from your Evans Gambit, right? Well, while we don't talk about it the same way, curling has openings too. Now, they're not as discrete as chess openings. I mean, every time a rock moves by an inch, it can really change how an end plays out, whereas chess pieces are either on a square or on another square. But still, we can talk in general terms about shot calls teams make at the start of each end, and what it means for how those entire ends will play out. Thankfully, curling openings aren't nearly as deep as chess openings either. One time I memorized over 2,000 positions in the Najdorf Sicilian alone, and really high-level players like grandmasters will do way more openings than even a typical tournament player will. In curling, knowing how just a few different opening sequences and a few types of shots will tend to play out will help you immensely when calling the first few shots of an end. To start this series, let's start with the first rock of the end. And let's start with one of the most basic options for the team without hammer. In this video, we're going to cover the simplest opening shot there is, which is throwing a draw into the top of the forefoot. So as the non-hammer team, what does starting the end with this shot do for you? Well, first, it gives you a counter that the hammer team will have to deal with at some point, either immediately or somewhere later in the end. It also keeps the sheet free of guards, for the time being at least. This promotes more hitting, lower scoring, and generally more conservative play throughout the end. So why do we choose to throw this shot sometimes? Well, the first thing to understand, as we said before, is that this is a conservative and safe play. It avoids complications. When you throw guards, there tend to be more possibilities, more rocks in play, more hidden rocks. That won't be the case with this shot. This shot is commonly thrown with the lead, when we can be fairly sure that the hammer team won't try to hit it, or will be happy if they do decide to hit it. When you watch this shot be called at higher levels of play, it can be used in the early ends to feel out the ice rather than take any chances. Often ends that start this way will end in a blank, especially if the hammer team is also okay with playing a safe conservative end. At lower levels of play, particularly when we're talking about club level play or league play, this shot is still much more conservative than throwing up a guard. However, it can also be used to test the hitting ability of the opposing team or even just the opposing lead. If your opponents can't hit this rock consistently, you can start setting up steals without the risks that come from starting the end with a centerline guard. One word of note, I wouldn't take this approach too far when you get down to casual nights, like for fun leagues and things like that. It can be a little rude to constantly just take advantage of, say, a new curler who doesn't have hit weight, or a very casual curler who just doesn't make hits well at all. It can lead to a very unfun game. But when you get to the Bonspiel level or on your club's competitive night, then it's fair game to test your opponents and see what they're capable of. So, to summarize, this shot will lead to less scoring and more hitting than throwing a centerline guard. It's appropriate to throw when you have the lead, or when you're in a close or early game situation and you want to play a conservative game where there's more hitting. Be aware that it's hard to be certain how an end will play out with this shot in a close game, especially if you don't know your opponents. They might still opt to throw a corner guard and steer the end in a more aggressive direction. When you throw this rock with the lead, you can pretty much expect your opponents to throw up that corner guard, as they'll want to try to complicate things to mount a comeback. As I said, This is one of the simplest opening shots in curling, and it doesn't immediately lead to any real complications. That doesn't mean the end can't get complicated later, and we'll see that once this series moves on to hammer responses and even third and fourth shots. But that's for further down the line in this series. For now, just know that this is the shot to throw when you have a pretty safe lead, or if your team prefers to hit over drawing. On the other hand, you really don't want to throw this rock when you are well behind in a game. If you need to steal, the other team isn't going to just let your rock sit there. They will hit it, and in most cases, they'll make that hit almost all the time. We are talking about a rock right in the center of the sheet, so even at more casual levels, this tends to be among the easiest hits for players to make. Thanks for watching the first video in my Curling Opening Book series. Next time I'll talk about what it means when you start the end by throwing a center guard, and we'll move on from there. If you enjoy this, be sure to like the video, subscribe, and hit the notification button. And if you have any thoughts on why else you might throw this shot to start and end, let me know in the comments and share it with the rest of our community. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon here on Chess on Ice.